Hello, how are you guys today? All right, so earlier this week I recorded the Easter Bunny's Assistant, and I said that that was a story about Easter and the Easter Bunny, and that was that special holiday coming up this week. Today I'm going to read one of my favorites. This is a story that we read every year. This is a story that you probably have heard about. I bet you've heard about Peter Rabbit before. Okay, we're going to read the tale of Peter Rabbit. So this one's kind of long. Get comfy. Turn your listening ears on. The tale of Peter Rabbit. Look at him. He's crawling under a fence. Wonder if that means that he's going to do something in our story. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. See them? "Now, my dears," said old Mrs. Rabbit one morning, "you may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there, and he was put in a pie by Mrs. McGregor. Now run along, and don't get into mischief. I'm going out." What does mischief mean? Kind of means trouble, yeah. Then old Mrs. Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the wood to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail were good little bunnies. They went down the lane to gather blackberries. There's Mrs. Rabbit. There's Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail getting blackberries. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. Do you know what it means to be naughty? It means to not make good choices. So there's Peter squeezing under the gate and not making a good choice. First, he ate some lettuce and some French beans, and then he ate some radishes, and then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for some parsley. Why do you think he felt sick? You think maybe he ate too much? Yeah, my belly can hurt if I eat too much. But around the end of a cucumber frame, who should he meet but Mr. McGregor? Oh, look at his face. See his face? He looked so surprised. Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees planting out young cabbages, but he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" Do you know what a thief is? That's someone who steals something. So he thought Peter was stealing. He was eating his food, so he might have been. I guess you could call that stealing. Peter was most dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, and he had forgotten the way back to the gate. He lost one of his shoes among the cabbages and the other shoe among the potatoes. Oh no, it said he was frightened, dreadfully frightened. That means he was so scared. After losing them, he ran on 4 legs and went faster, so that I think he might have gotten away altogether if he had not, unfortunately, ran into a gooseberry net. Oh no, he got caught in a net. And he got caught by the large buttons on his jacket. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, and it was quite new. Peter gave himself up for lost and shed big tears. But his sobs were overheard by some friendly sparrows, who flew down to him with great excitement and told him to exert himself. That means they were telling him, "Try harder, Peter, don't give up." Mr. McGregor came up with a sieve which he intended to pop upon the top of Peter, but Peter wriggled out just in time, leaving his jacket behind him, and rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a can. It would have been a beautiful thing to hide in if it hadn't had so much water in it. Oh no. So see the sieve? Yep, that's what a sieve is. And he jumped into the water can and he got all wet. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden underneath the flower pot. He began to turn them over carefully, looking under each one. Was he under that flower pot? No way. Presently, Peter sneezed. Achoo! Mr. McGregor was after him in no time and tried to put his foot on Peter, who jumped out of a window and knocked over 3 plants. The window was too small for Mr. McGregor, and he was tired of running after Peter, so he went back to his work. Oh no! He knocked over those plants, but he got out. Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath and trembling with fright, and he had not the least idea of which way to go. And he was also very damp from sitting in that can. Damp means wet. After a time, he began to wander about, going lippity-lippity, not very fast, and looking all around. He was lost, wasn't he? Oh man, I hope he makes it home. He found a door in a wall, but it was locked, and there was no room for a fat little rabbit to squeeze underneath. An old mouse was running in and out over the stone doorstep, carrying peas and beans to her family in the wood. Peter asked her the way to the gate, and she had such a large pea in her mouth that she could not answer. She only shook her head at him. Peter began to cry. Oh no. He's so sad. I would be sad too. Then he tried to find his way across the garden, but he became more and more puzzled. Presently he came to a pond where Mr. McGregor filled his water cans. A white cat was staring at some goldfish. She sat very, very still. But now and then the tip of her tail twitched as if it were alive. Peter thought it best to go away without speaking to her. He had heard about cats from his cousin, little Benjamin Bunny. Do you think the cat would probably try to chase Peter? I think so. I think that's probably why he ran away. He went back toward the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the noise of a hoe. Scritch, scratch, scratch, scritch. Peter scuttered underneath the bushes. But presently, as nothing happened, he came out and climbed upon a wheelbarrow and peeped over. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor hoeing his onions. His back was turned towards Peter, and just beyond him was the gate. See? There's Peter in the wheelbarrow on this page. There's Mr. McGregor hoeing his onions in the garden. Oh, you think he's going to try to run to the gate? I think so. Peter got down very quietly off the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could go, along a straight walk behind some blackcurrant bushes. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him at the corner, but Peter did not care. He slipped under the gate and was safe in the wood at last outside the garden. Oh my goodness, that was a close one. Mr. McGregor hung up the little jacket and the shoes for his scarecrow to frighten the blackbirds. Peter never stopped running or looked behind him until he got to the big fir tree. He was so tired that he flopped down upon the nice soft sand on the floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking. She wondered what he had done with his clothes. It was the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost in a fortnight. Lost his jacket and shoes again. I'm sorry to say that Peter was not very well during the evening. His mother put him to bed and made him some chamomile tea, and she gave a dose of it to Peter. 1 tablespoon to be taken at bedtime. So he laid down. He didn't feel very good. But Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail had bread and milk and blackberries for supper. The end. Oh me, Peter Rabbit, he always gets into some kind of trouble, that silly rabbit. All right, do you think maybe today you could write a sentence about the book? Maybe what happened first in the story, what happened next in the story, and what happened last in the story. You think you could write that? And if you want to, you can draw me a picture of what happened. You could draw a picture of your favorite part of the story. Miss Taylor's favorite thing is when we read a story together and then we remember parts of it together and we talk about our favorite parts or we talk about what happened in the story. And I'm really missing doing that in my classroom. So I really think if you could do that at home and send me a comment on the video or send me a message or send me a picture, I would love to see that. And I would love to see that we're still able to talk about our stories together. All right, have a good day.